Welcome, everybody, to Write Out Loud, the podcast about storytelling, writing, authorship, creativity, and all of the things that set your heart afire. I am here, of course, joined by the beautiful, the magical, the mystical, the luxurious Christina.
Ooh, luxurious.
Yes. No alliteration today, really, but
that's okay. You can't always find those.
Little curve.
Yeah.
Sometime
different. We need to tell the audience that this is just ridiculous. But you're insistent on doing it, and I have to go along with it.
Yes, exactly. I hold you captive to it. That is what it is. This week, we're going to jump off of our last episode with our very special guest, Kristen Ashley. And we wanted to just take some time to kind of reflect on the message that was really a thread throughout that entire interview. Yes. And if you haven't listened to it, you should head on back, listen to it, and then come back to us. Throughout her entire interview and the message around her journey and her development as an author, there was just one very, very clear message and one clear theme, and that was?
Believe in yourself.
Yes.
And I think if we even had her on the podcast in this second, she would be like, no, I didn't believe myself. I didn't care. And I think she even said during the episode, if I'm recalling correctly, that she just decided she was going to write for herself, put it out there, and it didn't matter if anybody read it or not. Mm-hmm. I'm not speaking to that part of it. I am speaking to the part of it that when she was writing and trying to get published by New York, because there were no ebooks. There were no self-published in that way. There was only Vanity Press. And coming from the book-selling world, for those that aren't familiar with the term Vanity Press it is a little bit archaic now because I don't think it exists. Now it might be something that you pay them to publish your book, and that's not what I'm talking about. Vanity Press would be someone who self-published and had a name that was a press, and most bookstores would not carry it. It's not something bookstores would carry. They didn't carry anything that anybody printed or published on their own. And it wasn't because they were snobs or anything like that. It's actually the way the back end of bookselling works is books have to be returnable. Bookstores that can't return books then are stuck with that book. And if they never sell it, they're out of money. Almost every single bookstore, including indie bookstores. So if you shop at an indie bookstore, they do work with the publishers and book distributors. And if the books are returnable, then they send them back. If they don't sell them, they send them back. And those distributors can redistribute the book somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Anyway, just to give you a little overview on Vanity Press, that's what Kristen was saying she didn't want to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that she wanted to get published by New York, she pursued that. And in order to pursue that back then, it was a lot of investment in money. You had to snail mail chapters, synopsis, other things. That cost money. She would have to go. So she said she went to the library. So that's not necessarily an expense, but was a book called The Writer's Digest that was so huge it looked like an encyclopedia. It's very I'm showing Matt how thick it was.
It's very thick, I can tell you.
Very thick, yeah. And that book actually had agents' names, editors' names, all sorts of things that you could submit to, the rules to submit, the costs for submitting, all of that. And so, an author like Kristen Ashley would go and spend hours. The idea that she spent so much time, so much money, and still got no's and still pursued it, that is a core belief in yourself. Even if it's not on the surface, she felt something. Because if she were just going to write these stories for herself and it didn't matter if anybody read them, then you don't care if New York says no. You don't care. You don't send off these manuscripts and spend the money to get that done.
Yep.
So there had to be some place deep down in her, and maybe it was subconscious, a belief in herself that this was going to happen, that this was a dream worthy of pursuit. So where I would like to take that a little bit is to the idea of, where are you at with your belief in yourself?
Yeah. Well, there's one piece I want to just touch on before we get into that.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a big core belief in yourself. There's also a belief in who you are that came through really clearly. Like, she's like, I'm a writer.
Yes.
I'm a writer. I'm going to
Yeah.
write. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
But I think there's also a piece of that which says, I can say that I'm a writer. I don't care if anybody's going to read it, while at the same time caring very deeply about the craft.
Yes.
Right? And saying, I'm going to make sure, because she even said very clearly, I just never want to write a shitty book.
Right.
Right? So to be able to put that out, and it's that balance of, I have a complete belief in myself. I know who I am, and I am very, very clear about the craft and my love for the craft of this.
Yeah.
Or love for this craft.
And I would also
those things
add,
together are so huge.
Yeah. I would add to that list too, the idea that she was not going to change her voice, meaning first person, in romance, even though that was the sole reason she kept getting turned down. Now, I'm sure there were many that would have said, okay, I've got to write this in third person. And then wrote it in third person and then submitted those. And she did, I think she even did say she tried to write stories in third person. And she does have stories in third person out there. But her beloved books, The Rock Chicks, Chaos, Colorado Mountain series, just The Berg. I mean, I could go on.
Yeah.
All written in first person. Yes, third person for the male point of view, the hero point of view, other points of views. But for the females, they're all written in first person. And we discussed that last week. So if you haven't listened to last week, go ahead and listen to that. So there still had to be some, like you said, core belief that she did not have to change who she was as a writer in order to get published.
Yep.
Someone was going to pick her up.
Yep. And I think that's just the marching orders, right? If you're listening to this thinking about, how do I really go down this road? You have to make a commitment to who you are, to what your voice is, and you've got to stick to that. It doesn't mean you can't take advice. It doesn't mean you can't take criticism and feedback and again, refine your craft.
Yeah.
But you have to know what your voice is. You have to know what type of a writer, what type of an author you are.
Yeah. And I think if you're in the pursuit of either self-publishing or getting published with a traditional publisher, I think you do need to take into consideration, who you are as your voice. How are you going to present, whether that is first person or third person, whether that is deep point of view, whether that is how you tell your story. One of the things that we talked about with Kristen that we just briefly discussed, it was not a significant moment in the conversation, but the epilogues. She decided she was going to have these long epilogues. And back in the day when I was reading, epilogues, we were lucky if we got one, and if you got one, it was a couple pages long saying da 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 da, and they lived happily ever after. But with Kristen's, you see into the future that this couple is solid and they are going to make it. And here's them doing this or that or whatever. And it's always something that's tied to the story itself. So it just makes it that much more full.
Sure.
And it also makes the ending not feel as abrupt. I mean, in some of these stories, it was like the author couldn't wait to get to and they were together and they're happily ever after. The end,
Yep.
you know, and you're like, not just left wanting more, but it kind of feels abrupt of like, really? There's
And
no
then
more
here's
pages. Yeah.
Here's the picture storybook wedding, and that's it.
So the idea that she knew who she was and how she was going to lay out her stories. So I would encourage listeners to, if you don't know who you are already, explore that. What are things that you like from other books that you're like, okay, I'm so going to do that? And that also means if you're reading a book and going, I'm always cheated out of a good, juicy epilogue, write a long epilogue. That's who you are. It all depends on what your voice is. And voice isn't just the first person, third person, that kind of thing. It's how you tell your story. It is what kind of story you're telling. And I'm not talking the genre. I am talking the feel. Are you making people happy as they read? Are you making them laugh, making them cry, making them feel tense, whatever?
Yeah.
Make them feel uncomfortable with who they are. No, you laugh, Matt, but some of the classics, they're written to make you feel uncomfortable. To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, yes, it's a great story and it's one of my all-time favorites, but it makes you uncomfortable. Huck Finn is another one that it makes you feel uncomfortable. It's not just a boy and a black man going down the Mississippi River.
Right.
So yeah, who are you as a writer? Take those things into consideration. And I think that would help the belief. I think that helps if you know who you are to build up that belief. But let me tell you, we didn't ask this question of Kristen. And maybe in a future podcast, if she comes back, she will. She'll answer this. But I wonder how many people told her to give up. I wonder how many people said to her, you really want to do this? Do you want to keep getting these no's? And I think anybody who has had a dream has gotten that kind of feedback. They don't mean to be mean or rude or make you feel bad.
They're trying to protect you.
They're trying to protect you, but that is dream stifling. And so you've got to have more belief in yourself. Get a little bit of that chutzpah that says,
This is who I am. This is what I was meant to do.
I am meant to do this, and I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know where, when, who I'm going to meet.
Yep.
And sometimes it does come down to meeting one person or another that just makes something click.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved that aspect of spending time with Kristen and just getting to kind of explore that a little bit. And I think it segued into this because we talked about doing an episode around believe in yourself, right? And this was like the perfect kind of segue. We couldn't have scripted it any better. But I want to talk a little bit about what we are going to look forward to here in the near future, which is something we're really referring to as resistance fiction.
Yeah. This is where it first came to me in an article, and I believe it was written by Britt Marling, who is the writer-creator of the OA Murder at the End of the World. I love her writing, the stories she tells, the TV series. I think she did an article in the New York Times or something like that, and it was an opinion piece. And she brought up this term resistance fiction. And I was like, what is that? I don't even know. And so I looked it up, and resistance fiction is the idea that all fiction either reinforces the status quo or rebels against it. And so we're going to explore what the idea of that means. So, pre-recording, Matt and I were bouncing stuff back and forth, book titles and movie and TV and that sort of thing. So one of the obvious ones is Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
resistance fiction. That is going against status quo. That is showing that back in the 70s, you have to remember the 70s, that women could be a princess, but also a commander,
Mm-hmm.
a general, a person,
Senator.
yeah, a person who is leading rebel forces.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and in fact, in the franchise itself, it's We Are the Resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely resistance fiction. Something like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, or what is that?
Yeah.
I
How to Lose a Guy
I
in 10
totally
Days.
watched it. Yeah.
Yep.
The Kate Hudson, Matthew McConaughey movie. I would say that's just status quo. But something like you mentioned, 10 Things I Hate About You, because I think the two films were based off of Shakespeare's Taming
Yep.
of the Shrew in some ways. But I would consider 10 Things I Hate About You resistance fiction because it goes against the status quo. It goes against what societal norms had a teenager doing during, when was that filmed? 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So you kind of can see resistance fiction. So what we thought we would do with this, because it's a topic that Matt and I are not experts on. I'm not even sure that there's an expert out there than to find the person who coined this phrase. And we thought we would wrap it around one of the books that was listed as resistance fiction. And it's a book that's been popping up constantly since.
We're not sure why, but it seems to be popping up a lot lately.
And it is called Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And in fact, the first time I ever heard about this book was in season 2 of the OA, that Britt Marling. And I think that's where she got the idea to put the book title into season 2. It's just a brief thing. And almost if you blink, you might miss it. And I don't think she meant it to be anything other than a book that she liked, that she wanted to put in the series.
Sure.
Now that I know what resistance fiction is, and you know, her mentioning that, I do wonder if she put it in there because this is one of those resistance fiction books. And in fact, a lot of things that I came across actually kind of say that this is the preeminent resistance fiction. This is where whoever coined that phrase kind of came up with it. So we thought we'd read it, discuss it, maybe bring someone on to discuss the book. Octavia Butler herself is passed, so that's not going to be possible to talk to the author herself.
Well, the seance.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're putting it on your radar now. We will let you know at least a week in advance, like, okay, next week we are going to be doing resistance fiction. But man, I have to read the book first and make sure that we've got some good content and find that person to have on to help us discuss it and stuff. So we wanted to put it on your radar, on your plate, that if you want to follow along and read Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, write in with some thoughts and questions. If you have already read the book and have a lot to say about it, and the idea of resistance fiction makes perfect sense to you, let us know. Tag us on social media, send us an email, go to our webpage, leave us a voicemail.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think even getting to talk and align it to how do you write resistance fiction? Like, what are some of the ways that you can make your own story and even look at your own writing and go, is this upholding the status quo or challenging it?
Yeah.
And how do if my intent is to challenge it, how do I do that?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
we can talk a little bit about how that works too in that context.
Yeah. And in the context that Britt Marling was talking about, it was, she is always writing resistance fiction because she is a feminist, but she weaves it so intricately into her stories that you don't even realize, you know, and she talked about why she's attracted to science fiction. That area was because she could create things that are not the norm.
Sure.
in order to tell her stories. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting topic. Like I said, it's not one that's really talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I'm
excited.
excited to read the book too.
I'm excited. I think it'll be good, and we'll have a lot of good discussion around it. So,
Yeah.
looking forward to that. But we'll definitely, like you said, we'll give you plenty of warning that it's coming, and then we'll have a good old conversation about it.
Yeah, but you can start now. Start reading it now, making your
Yep.
notes. Reach out
Yep.
to us if you have gem you'd like to drop us, or if you want to be involved in the show.
I'm sure you can find it at your local library.
Yes.
So, maybe it's very popular right now. So who knows?
Yeah, it is. It is. Like
be harder to
after I
find.
told you I wanted to do that, like I kept seeing it pop up everywhere in social
Mm-hmm.
media. And a lot of people are saying it's prescient to our times, which again, I think that's part of why I'm excited to read it. I want to see what somebody predicted I believe it was written in the 90s.
Yeah.
So,
Let me see. Oh, look. Parable of the Sower. I'm in my local Libby app, and it is. Let's see here. I can place a hold.
was it checked out?
1 copy in use and 29 people waiting.
29 people waiting. Oh, dear.
So I put a hold on it. So we'll see.
Yes.
I'm number 30
Does
now in line.
Does it say what year it was published?
1983.
1993.
Yes. So there we go. We'll take a look
Yep.
and we'll
Yeah,
read it,
so
and we will talk about
And
it.
if everybody can't get it right away, I mean, like we can wait and discuss. People have had a chance to read it, so it won't be in the next couple of weeks for certain.
Nope. We'll give you some
So-
time.
Yeah, give people time to read it. Maybe we'll do it towards the end of the season
Yeah.
to give
There you go.
everybody a good chance to read it.
There you go.
Cool.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. So, again, thank you for listening. As always, we very much appreciate that. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a review, you can do that in our website. You can do that on Apple Podcasts. You can do that anywhere you get your podcasts. But also, share it with a friend. Share it with somebody who hasn't listened before. Share it on social media. Put it out there. I'm sure there's some people that would love to talk about
and if
resistance
you tag
fiction with
us, we'll come and chit chat with you.
Well, very good. Thank you again, my dear. As always, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, keep on creating. Get your voice out there because that's where it belongs.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.